Okay, everyone, I think we're going to get going. I know there's people that are still joining us, and we'll let them in as they do. Firstly, I just want to thank you all for coming. We know that it's quite short notice asking for people to come and to join us, and we really appreciate that you're here. Let me just explain a few technical things about how everything will work this evening. Everyone, I believe, is on mute, so you are unable to speak and to speak to everyone in the group. And we've done this not because we don't want to have interaction with you, but just whilst we're at right now as we speak, there's almost 90 people online. We just need to be able to ensure that we can have a clear message which is going out. I know many of you have sent questions already in advance of this evening. We'll make sure that we answer all of those, and if there are other questions that people have throughout the evening, then please, there is a chat box, so please feel free to put them in there, and towards the end of the evening, after we have gone through all of the things that we wanted to say, we'll make sure we look through that and answer any questions that people may have. So let's start by saying, like, we recognize that this has been a very, very difficult few months for everyone, and I'm sure for your children as well. It's been a very difficult time, and we want to make sure that FZY can offer something this summer that will hopefully be able to bring some light to what has been a difficult period of time for everyone. I realized, by the way, sorry, I haven't actually introduced myself. My name is Joel. I'm the Executive Director of FZY. And I've been working for FZY, for its sister youth movement, since 2003 for the last 17 years. So as I said, we want to be able to provide something this summer that can hopefully give your kids some light on what has been a very, very difficult and challenging time. So we're doing this like last Wednesday afternoon, only 6 days ago, the UK government finally published some guidelines for out-of-school settings. And those out-of-school settings includes what FZY offers. And so we've taken the last 6 days going over those and trying hard to work out what exactly it is that we can offer that will both be fun, meaningful, and safe for participants. And that's what we want to be able to offer you this evening. The first thing I want to do before we get into exactly what we're offering, I do want to say a word on the residential camps, OFEC, Keshe UK, that I'm sure that many of your children have registered for. So within these guidelines, it became very, very clear that unfortunately we couldn't run these programs. I'm just going to read you one line from the guidelines now, where it says, you should not offer overnight or residential provision to children for the time being. That made it very clear that the program that we wanted to run, the program that I believe that all of you or most of you have signed your kids up for, just isn't a possibility. And it's something which is obviously sad, but we need to do what is safe and what is right. And we still believe that even though we can't run residential camps, we can take many of the key elements of those to actually to provide a different yet fun and good, meaningful experience. So with that in mind, what I want to do, I'm going to introduce one other person now. That person is called Imi. She is the National Director of FZY, and I'm going to ask her to start this meeting by explaining a little bit about how what these camps that we will be offering, what these day camps will actually look like. So I'm going to turn to Imi.
Hi everyone, just wanted to echo what Joel said. Thank you so much for coming and listening, and hopefully you'll be able to leave with a bit more information about everything that we're offering this summer. So I want to start off firstly by explaining how it's going to work. So it's going to be a 2-week day camp from Monday to Friday. Timings will be around 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And it's still going to be the same summer camp that we all hoped for, just slightly adapted to fit with the current times. So we're still going to have the Maccabees, we're still going to have the colour wars, we're still going to have all the amazing activities which make people want to sign up for FZY. They're just going to be adapted to fit the current guidelines, which Joel will go into after I've finished. Additionally, to all of these fantastic activities that I've spoken to a lot of you about before you signed your children up. We'll be having 2 days. One of them will be a day trip to somewhere like a theme park, a zoo, a Go Ape type thing, something outside, external from the site that we'll be based at. And the other is a volunteering day somewhere in the Jewish community. So we felt that we have so many young people joining us this summer that it would be such a great use of their time to go and give something back to the community, which has suffered so much during this time. So all the people who will be leading your children are madrachim who have grown up in FZY. They have all undergone a 2-year leadership course. And specifically for this year, they will have had specific training to suit the COVID needs that have come from the pandemic, which we have outsourced, and it's all done by specialist people who are specialists in the subject. On the actual camp itself, there'll be outside activities, there'll be lots based on team building, leadership, making new friends, getting out of your comfort zone, the same type of thing that you would expect to get from a residential camp. With also something which we call chagim, which is a specialized time which happens every day and is focused on things like sports. The Sofim, which is our Israeli sisters in Israel, our sister movement, focusing on outside and fires and campsites and those kind of things. And that's every day, and that will change every day, and that will be consistent and part of their programming. One thing I know was asked prior to this meeting was, what's the difference between a year 7 going on this camp and a year 10 going on this camp? And the truth is, unlike what it would have been if we were having residential camp, where the year 10s would be mixing with Israelis who have come over specifically for camp, and it's obviously longer. We've tried to replicate this in the best way that we can, and that will all be shown within our programming. So everyone who will be at the oldest age group will do everything one step further than the younger age groups, and that will all be shown through our programming. So that's a little synopsis of what the summer will hopefully look like. So Joel, back to you to talk about the COVID stuff.
So just going to add a couple of things onto what Emmy said. In terms of like the year 7, 8, year 9 and year 10, which we're offering these camps for, they will be separate. So they're not going to be mixing throughout the period of time. But in terms of like what a daily schedule looks like, they will be similar. But as Emmy said, the older participants will be kind of like going into things in a deeper level, and then there may be some of the younger participants. So we do want to touch on some of the guidelines and some of the COVID, some of the things that we need to put together to make sure we can have a COVID secure camp. So the first thing to say is that we are holding this camp. The camp is actually going to be held in Arkley. It's going to be held in Maccabi, the grounds of Maccabi London, which has a 50-acre site. And one of the reasons why we wanted to choose there is because it's outdoors, and according to all legislation and guidance, even though we are allowed to be indoors now with in this type of setting, there is definitely a preference to be outdoors to minimize spreading of the risk of spreading the virus. So that's why we chose to be outdoors, but we also recognize that, we're in Britain, it's a British summer, and we certainly aren't going to be relying on the weather itself. And so we have brought in, and we are bringing in, marquees which are large enough so that there can be 2-meter distancing between each participant, which is what which are the guidelines state. So there will be each group. We're going to talk about that in a minute. These groups, these bubbles, but each group there will be enough marquees which will be there around this 50-acre site. Where each group will have their own marquee. So if the weather, if it's too hot or if it's raining, there is a place indoors where the participants can be socially distanced. And if it's nice weather, then each group will also have an area outside which will be allocated to them where they can be, which obviously is in many ways more pleasant. So I mentioned about these groups and bubbles. According to the guidelines, these out of school activities can have bubbles of a maximum of 15 participants. So they are the guidelines that we're working with. And our aim are to be having groups of 15. Obviously, it would depend on, it would determine on what the final number are, the exact number of people who sign up. But our aim will be to be having groups of up to 15 participants in a group. We want to be able to, in some ways, maximize that for a social element. But at the same time, you know, we want to be wary and make sure that we're being safe with everything that we're doing. So these bubbles of 15, according to the guidelines, are not, number one, they have to remain in the same bubbles from when they start camp until when they finish your camp or your activity. And number two, they're not allowed to interact with other bubbles, with other groups. It's a very, very similar protocol that schools have to adhere to for those schools which are already back and those schools which were and year groups that will be going back in the coming months. It's all about bubbles of 15, and they cannot mix. And so that is how we're working on things. And this maybe also reflects, I know that some people have asked questions about is it possible to come just for certain days of the camp? Is it possible, you know, do we need to sign up for the full 2 weeks? Can we sign up for just 1 week, etc.? Because of those guidelines, we're not really able to offer people just to say you can just sign up for a few days here, a few days there, a week here, a week there, because of these self-styled bubbles. We want to make sure if we have people keep coming in and out, that is a health risk which isn't allowed according to the guidelines, but B, that also potentially impacts on the social the element that we can provide, because obviously, you know, groups of 15, which is great, but we don't want people to, you know, for people just to be there just for a few days, and that group can therefore not maintain a group of, you know, a large enough group. So that's how the bubbles will be, and as I've mentioned, most of the time they'll be outdoors, there'll be marquees there, they'll be able to social distance. Other elements that we're putting in place to ensure that these camps will be COVID secure. We will have cleaning staff who will be coming kitted up in PPE, who will be on the site the whole time. They will be regularly going around and cleaning, disinfecting all of the general areas there that are being used. And that will be happening on a regular basis, and they'll be having a very clear schedule of where they need to go to ensure that that's being done. In terms of things like toilets, there's, you know, we're bringing in a number of toilets, of portaloos, and we're actually getting the company which are bringing it in to come in the middle of camp to also to add, you know, to as well as our cleaning staff who are coming in to clean them, for them to be done on, you know, in a professional way through certain chemicals that the portaloo company will be there to ensure that these toilets are clean, hygienic, and we will be as best as possible staggering the break times and things like that. So different groups will hopefully be using those toilets at different times to allow them to be cleaned in between as well, to minimize any interaction and to try and keep those as COVID secure as possible. Obviously, on a hygiene level, we'll be providing alcohol gel, antibacterial wipes. All of those things will be, you know, in bountiful supply across the site in all the places that the groups will be using. We'll be encouraging, obviously, participants to be, you know, regularly, washing their hands and cleaning. Emmy mentioned about the timings of the program of around like 8:30 to 5:30. I know there was a question on that which came in, so I'm going to talk about the question and how that's also developed a little bit in terms of the COVID piece. Like we wanted to be able to create camps over a full day, which also will allow parents to go to work. We recognize that a lot of people potentially, if they haven't been working all along, are potentially going back to work now. We want to be able to provide day camps which will allow parents as much as possible to be able to have a full day of work. We also that there will be staggered arrival and staggered departure times for the groups. So even though we said the camp will be roughly from 8:30 to 5:30, you know, each group will have a slightly different arrival time and a slightly different departure time to ensure that there won't be congestion on the way in and the way out. And there are also 3 different entrances and exits for this site, and different groups will be assigned different places to arrive, so that to minimize interaction between, you know, people coming in, and to ensure there will be less congestion, basically. There will be PPE, which will be on site at all times. For the majority of the time, participants or staff don't need to wear those, but there is PPE there. Obviously, we'll have a medic who will be on site all the time, and the medic will obviously be wearing PPE the whole time, because they will, at times, have to go from bubble to bubble to dealing with any participant that may be ill. And there will be enough PPE on site for any staff or any participant, should they need at any point. There'll be enough PPE on site for them to use. The last thing that we're doing in terms of this, to make sure that the camp can be COVID secure, is to ask you, all of you as parents of participants, to make sure that you don't send your kids in if they're showing any of the signs that the government has raised as potential signs of COVID. That doesn't mean that they will have it, but it's potential signs, whether that's a new or continuous cough, a high temperature, or a loss in change in taste or smell. If your kid, your son or daughter, is showing any of those signs at any point, we do ask that you do not send your kid into the camp on that day, so that we can make sure be as safe as possible, so that no one is going to bring the virus into the camp itself. So there are a variety of the different measures that we are taking. All of this will be sent to you in more detail a little bit nearer the time, and provide you with a full breakdown of exactly how we're doing things and our policies and procedures for that. But that's just a small understanding of how the things that we are doing and things that we're putting in place in order to make sure that these camps can be not just fun and enjoyable, but also safe place for your children to be over the time. So let me say now a few words about application process and how that works. Hopefully at about 8 p.m. tonight, in about 40 minutes from now, applications will be going live on our website. That's something with right now, like the person who manages our website is just finalizing all of that. So hopefully, it's about 40 minutes from now, application forms will be going live. I know a number of people have asked about priority spacing for people who had previously signed up for OFEC or for Keshe, and there is absolutely priority placing for those people who had previously signed up for one of our residential camps. Firstly, I do want to say that we believe that we have enough space on our program. There are limits that we can take, both on the space that we have, the resources we have in terms of staffing, and to ensure that we can be COVID secure. There are absolutely limits that we have on ourselves for the camp, but we believe that we have enough space for everyone who has signed up on OFEC and Keshe from the London area, and potentially even some additional people as well, some new people as well. So we're not concerned about whether there's going to be a lack of space, but at the same time, we will be offering priority for those people that have had signed their participants up to one of our OFEC or Keshe programs, our summer residential programs, as long as you apply before midnight on the 13th of July, before the end of the day on Monday, next Monday. As long as you apply by then, you will have priority place on the camp. Obviously, I know that's not very long from now, but obviously the camps are not very long from now either. So we do want to allow time to be able to process other applications if people who are, people don't want to come on. So we will be holding places for everyone who was signed up for OFEC and Keshe until the end of the 13th of July. After that priority will then be gone. The application process, as I said, the application forms will be opening very shortly on our website. We have created very purposely only a very, very short application form. It's asking for 4 things only. Number one, some very, very basic contact information, so we can identify who you and your participant and your son or daughter are via the application forms that many of you would have already started or completed. And then there's 3 other things. One is an updated set of terms and conditions, because this is obviously a different and new program, and we're living in a slightly different world to we were before. Number 2 is a waiver about COVID-19. And number 3 is an updated code of conduct, which includes certain conducts that we would expect for all participants on the program, to adhere to things like social distancing and things like that. So they are the 4 things which are on this application. It's very short. It's about, to go on there, to complete the basic contact information, to read those things and to accept those things. And assuming you have already completed your OFEC or CareShare online application forms, that is all you need to do. If you haven't, then someone from our FZY team will be in contact with you, within 24 to 48 hours after you've completed that initial form, and we'll send you a link to the other forms where you need to complete. So we have all the information that we require to be able to run the camps. In terms of payment for the camp itself, the camp for 2 full weeks, which includes the day trips out, which Imi spoke about, includes the staffing, the security, the marquees, all of the measures that we need to put in place, and there are quite a lot of measures that we do need to put in place in order for it to be COVID secure. So the price for the 2 weeks of camp is £450. Anyone who has already paid money towards OFEC or CareShare, money can be transferred straight over to the new program. And if there are balances to be paid, for those of you which have only paid just a deposit up until now, there would be a small balance still to pay. For any of you which potentially have paid the whole price of OFEC and CareShare, there would actually be a refund, and I'll talk about refunds in a second. But any monies that have already been paid will be transferred directly over to the program. And then balances can be settled. Obviously, for those people which hadn't yet signed up to OFEC or CareShare, or hadn't yet paid a deposit for any reason, then they would pay the full balance. Obviously, the camp is only a few weeks away, and so payment is due immediately. There is a number of we're already having to start laying down deposits for marquees and the cleaning companies and the toilets and all of these other things, and so we do need to ask that payment is immediate. In terms of friends, as part of the application process that some of you would have already completed, there was something on there already asking you about friends. For those of you which haven't completed that process, you will have that opportunity to request friends. And for those of you which have done it and would like to update that list, you can just send an email to our FZY administrator. So you will have an opportunity to say that I would like to be with certain friends. We will guarantee that we will put you with at least one of those friends, but we were aiming to actually put you with more than that. We recognize that with the guidance, with the guidelines that are put in place right now in terms of the bubbles of 15 and no interaction, normally when we create these groups on our summer camp, we call them FZY, we normally try and mix up participants as much as we possibly can. But recognizing how the social bubbles work and the interaction and pieces like that, like we will try and put slightly larger groups of people together. But at the same time, we're not going to, we need to be wary of the social dynamics of those groups. We want to make sure that there are both males and females within the groups, and we don't want to have one very, very large dominant group within a group of 15. So we guarantee that we will put you with at least one of the names of the people that you put down in your list. But we probably will try and avoid having groups of more than about 4 or 5 people together in one of those bubbles, so as to ensure the right social dynamic there. In terms of groups, will be according to school year, so you won't be with you won't be with children, other participants. Participants won't be with people from other school years. The only exception on that is obviously like we're in a situation where where there's very strict guidelines. Like normally, like on our regular camp, if we want to put 16 people in a group, it's very easy for us to put 16 people in a group. That's not something we can do here. So if the maths was to work out that we could either have 2 groups of 8, which won't be good socially, and it won't be, and it's, it just won't work particularly well, or take 2 school years and put them together and create more evenly sized groups, then that's what then we would consider doing that. Our aim is to only put people from the same school year together. If we do mix school years, they will only be mixed with 1 year apart. We won't be mixing people in school year 7 with year 10 at all. Like school year 7 maybe with year 8, year 8 possibly with year 7 or possibly with year 9. But we're hoping that as much as possible, the school year groups will be set according to school year, but based on the guidelines that we have, we just need to have a little bit of flexibility to maximize the number of people that we can take off on the program, and to make these camps as socially to work as well as socially as they possibly can. Okay, a couple of words now on the refund process for those people that are interested in understanding about that. So tomorrow we'll be sending out a full email with much of the information that we're saying now, a link to this video as well, for those which may have missed certain things. And also included in there will be links obviously to apply for our program, but also be links to apply to a form to claim a refund. As we've mentioned in previous emails, we will be providing a full refund minus £25, which covers like a number of lost and sunk costs, which unfortunately have gone based on the fact that we can't run the program that was originally signed up for. There are options as well to take a refund credit note if people feel like they want to be able to, they are unable to go on these day camps this year, but are very interested in going on one of our programs next year. So they could take a refund credit note, and people with a refund credit note, just so you're aware, will have priority on some of our future programming going forward. Obviously, you can choose to donate that money, and also you can do a mixture of the above. You can donate some, take some back in a refund credit note or refund, etc. So there will be a form that will be sent out tomorrow with some other information. It's a very short form to complete that, and then that refund process will start over the coming days. The last thing that I'm going to say before I'm going to stop talking for a few seconds and pass on to Imi, and then we'll look through some of the questions that people maybe have posted here, is we do want to say that, like, for FZY, inclusivity is an important value, and we recognize something. We're very sad that we're unable, like, we are in a national youth movement, and we have many members that come from Manchester, Leeds, Glasgow, from all over the UK. But we've recognised that given the situation this year, we're unable to run these camps all over the country based on our resources, based on the demand in some of these places, and many other factors. So that we are offering another program called the Taskmaster program. So I'm just going to pass back over to Imi now, who's going to say a few more words on that before we'll come back and we'll try and answer the last questions that people may have, and to try and conclude.
Cool. Thanks, Joel. So the Taskmaster is based off the TV show called Taskmaster, and those that sign up will receive an FZY DIY kit, and will be set daily challenges to complete from the comfort of their home using the kit that we send home prior. They'll then submit them each day by a certain time, and the Madrahim will look through them, pick a winner, and then everyone will come together later that afternoon to meet each other virtually and to discuss the challenge, look at the winner, and have a brief activity based about the day, based on getting to know each other, and based on trying to have that camp environment and that camp social life, but from the comfort of your own home. So it's going to be 8 days, Monday to Thursday, on the same 2 weeks that our day camps are running. So we really wanted to figure out how we could try and engage those that couldn't make it to our London day camps, and we are very hopeful that this will be a really exciting and engaging way to stay involved with FZY despite the distance.
Okay. Thank you, Imi. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to talk through, like, I can see there's a number of questions in the chat. Some of them we've already answered, some of them we haven't. So I'm just going to go through some of these questions and to try and answer them for you before we wrap up this meeting. So the website address for those of you that want to be able to try and go on and to apply is www.fzy.org.uk. www.fzy.org.uk, and hopefully in about half an hour from now, forms will be, everything will be up live. We will be, as I said before, we will be sending an email tomorrow, and we'll have a link to the exact application form. And for those of you which have already applied to offer Kokesha, as I said, there is priority, as I said, till the 13th of July. In terms of what I would say, I know there's a couple of people which have put into the chat something about is it definitely not possible to do 1 week, or etc. I would say if there are exceptional cases, exceptional reasons, that we may be able to look into it on certain exceptions. But as a general rule, the answer to it is no, because we do need to try and make sure that we can create and still maintain these social groups, whilst not affecting our COVID regulations. So what I would say is, if there are specific people who are specifically that there's a certain day that you may not be able to attend, or if there's you have specific question about the week, what I would say is to be in contact with the FZY office tomorrow or in the next few days on an individual personal basis, and we will look at each case as they come. But as a general rule, it does need to be the full 2 weeks. So yeah, one thing I would say, the FZY office, the FZY staff have been working from home over the last number of weeks. But the FZY office is opening up fully tomorrow, so you could reach FZY both on through regular emails and also through our office phone number as well. So that's the best email address to try and reach would be ruth@fzy.org.uk. So that's ruth@fzy.org.uk, or you could call our office number, which is 0208 201 661. So it's 0208 201 661 if you have any questions specifically about that. The good question here about meals and are we providing, or is it packed lunch? Due to the COVID rules and regulations, we do need to, it is for packed lunch. It's a little bit more complicated when it comes to food. One of the things that we're asked in terms of the lunches that you provide, we ask every day that people bring a packed lunch and a bottle of water. We will have water stations set up around the site so that people can continually refill their water. In terms of the lunch itself, we ask that it's both kosher and nut-free, so that we can cater for everyone which is there. So yes, there will also be a tuck shop, which won't be necessarily them walking into a tuck shop. It will be done in a COVID secure way, but there will be a tuck shop which will be available throughout the camp. So there will be opportunities for participants to purchase snacks throughout the day, which is easier to us to provide than actually meals itself. Question about childcare vouchers is something I actually am not entirely sure of. So I recommend for the person who asked that to please contact the FZY office tomorrow, and we'll make sure we'll get you an answer for that. In terms of day trips, can kids go on coaches? There are rules about coaches. The answer to that is yes. Socially distanced on coaches, which means on a coach that in theory contains around 50 people, we can probably give or take around 30 people on a coach. For the time that they would be on buses or on coaches, it would be obviously private buses or private coaches. The time they'll be on that, they would need to wear masks for that part of the journey, for that journey, which is not, they don't generally speaking on camp need to wear masks, but they would at the time that they would be going on a coach. But that is something that is allowed. I think we've answered about boys and girls in the bubble. They are. Can you specify siblings to be together? Absolutely. The same as when it comes to friends. The day trips, as I said, these guidelines only came out less than a week ago. Most of the places that we would want to send them to trips to were only allowed to open 3 days ago. So we are trying to just finalize that now. But as Imi mentioned, these trips will be, the idea is to be fun, whether that's fun through a theme park, something like Thorpe Park or Chessington, whether that's fun and is a more activity-based thing, whether that's something like Go 8, whether that's, there's many options that we're looking at. So we haven't been able to finalize that yet, just based on the fact that most of these companies, organizations, places that we could go and we could use themselves are only just opening up them. And so we are in the process of making those contacts, but we are, saying that there will be those there on the trip. So we will, we absolutely will aim to be sharing who the kids will be in the bubbles are before camp. We're not going to be able to say it's going to be very far before camp. I mean, we're only about 3 weeks away from camp now, and obviously the application process is only just starting now, and we obviously need to wait a certain amount of time so we can wait for people to apply before we can sort that out. But we will try and send that out before camp so that you can see those. We don't expect that we'll be able to really make any changes once we have sent those out. But obviously, if there's an issue, then you're more than welcome to get in contact with us. But there are lots of restrictions that are going to be put on us, and we're going to obviously try and do the best that we can do. So that's a good question about how much the Taskmaster costs. It's £75 for Taskmaster. So that's £75 for the Taskmaster. And more details about that can obviously be found on the website. I know there's more here about like 1 week options and specific days. As I said, like that is problematic. It's difficult. It's difficult on many levels, on both on the COVID piece, on financially to be able to put these things together. It's very, very challenging to make these things a little bit smaller, to make the time less than that. We did explore those options, but we found that really 2 weeks is really the only option that is available to us. But as we said, if there are specific people with specific reasons that you thought you could only join for 1 week or can only join for certain days, then be in contact with us personally, and we will see what we can do on an individual basis. We've said that roughly the start time is 8:30 in the morning till 5:30, but those times will be staggered to the groups, and we'll send that out. In terms of the refund, as soon as we'll pay that, so we'll send out those forms. It said tomorrow, and we will start processing those, over the coming days, over the coming weeks. So we want to be able to try and get that money back to people who are unable to come on the programs as soon as possible. We're not trying to keep that for any reason. So as soon as we can do that, we will be doing that. So in terms of like can it be later than 8:30, the drop off? As we said, we wanted to try and create an opportunity that parents could have a full day of work within there. That's why we chose the times at 8:30 to 5:30. So that's why that's how kind of like the days were formed in that way over those times. But like we can certainly have a look at that again, but that may not be able to happen. A question about the bubbles and the 15 kids. Look, the answer to the question is like bubbles are not allowed to mix, even are not allowed to interact. That's very clear within the guidelines. Even at 2 meter distance, they're not allowed to interact. Obviously, they're all going to be on the same site. We're looking hopefully to be operating 15 different bubbles of 15 participants. That's our capacity. So in theory, we could have 225 people there on the site. There is no, obviously that people will be able to see each other. We'll see each other from a distance, but we're not going to be able to facilitate any activities together. We're not going to be able to, like, if we see that people are, breaking the social distance and speaking and meeting with people from different groups, that will be problematic for us. And I want to explain a little bit why. Number one, obviously there's the safety element there, but number two, that should, worst case scenario, that should someone show with symptoms during the period of time, that person would need to leave the camp immediately, return home, and would need to self-isolate and have a test. Should that test come back as positive, at that point, a decision is made by FZY, but potentially by the health authorities, like dictated to FZY, or potentially as a conversation, will dictate what needs to be shut down. If the bubbles have been kept as bubbles and isolated well, then hopefully the health authorities will allow us just that only a single bubble would be shut down. But if bubbles have been freely mixing with one another, apart from obviously the health concerns that are there, which we're obviously trying to avoid, that also has the a bigger ability to shut down the whole of camp for everyone, which is obviously something that we want to try and avoid. So we want to avoid, number one, spreading anything if if there was to be someone who was to be showing symptoms and actually had coronavirus on the camp, but also to minimize the risk to other people and the risk to shutting down the whole of camp if that happens. So like we will, if the government guidelines change between now and the 27th of July, which they may well do, then obviously we will do that. And if there's an opportunity, if the government guidelines nearer off, say that, a little bit nearer the time, that we have the ability to change those social bubbles from 15 people to 30 people or to whatever that says, then we will obviously we will accommodate those things. But right now we have to stick to what the guidelines are saying, which are 15 people. And unfortunately, those bubbles won't be allowed. So to mix it. In terms of like political discourse within the workshop, is there any Zionist slant to any of our talks or activities? So FZY is a pluralist youth movement. We're pluralists both in our political nature, and we're pluralists within our religious nature, which means that we do not educate in any one way. We try to provide participants with a variety of different viewpoints, from the left and the right, from religious to secular. We don't say what is right, we don't say what is wrong. We provide different educational narratives, and then we provide a platform for them to kind of like determine for themselves what they think is right for them. So obviously we're not going to be going in too deep to any of these things, certainly not for the younger years. And we recognize this as a summer camp, but we are a Zionist ideological youth movement, and that will, Israel and Judaism, some of these things will absolutely be there within our camps, but we are not going to dictate one way or another or tell anyone what is right and what is wrong. So I think if anyone missed it, it's £75 for the Taskmaster online activity. People can provide names for friends. So people can provide names for friends. In terms of like activities the kids will be doing, some examples. So Imi, I think before explained, part of the time will be based under what we call term as chugim, which will be sports-based, arts-based, sofim-based, which is our sister movement in America, which is more like scouting, outdoorsy type basis. Part of the day will be doing like these without any educational element to the activities, like fun, themed kind of activities. Some activities will be based around like an educational theme. Jewish Zionist Israeli educational theme. That's not, to make it very clear, we're an informal education youth movement, so it's not about us sitting down and formally. It's not a school environment. It's not about us formally, educating participants. It's about informal education, which will be creating engaging, interactive activities within the guidelines that we have available to us. For them to engage in activities that might be, planning campaigns. It might be actually maybe Imi. Do you have any ideas of? Maybe I'll put Imi off of mute so she can actually share some of this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of activities that we're doing, obviously Joel mentioned the chagim. But I'll maybe perhaps go through kind of a daily, what a day might look like on when you're on camp and not on these day trips. So you'll get there, and then the morning will be a really exciting, engaging activity written by our young leaders based around the theme of the day. So the theme could be anything to do with the universe, anything to do something like that. The theme of the day will be a 2-hour exciting thing, getting people up and moving, talking, discussing, socializing, having some fun, something like that. There'll then be, like Joel mentioned, a chug, something sporty, specifically, completely irrelevant to any themes, any education, just a fun little hour. There'll then be some lunch. The afternoon will then have something that we call a FZY activity, which is basically all about creating a camp environment, something that's super fun, super high energy, really exciting. And then there'll be an hour at the end after that, which will be a little more educational based. And then they'll have a final SICUM, which is kind of like a sum up of the day. And then they'll go home. So that's kind of like a basic structure of the day. What these activities could include could be anything for the educational ones, discussions. As Joel mentioned, it's all done informally, so it'll be nothing like they experience at school. They won't feel like they're, learning at all. It will all be done completely informally. And the exciting ones could be anything from creating things to partaking in a game show type activity. It really varies from the activity and from the day, but they're all really high energy and really exciting and not boring. I can promise you that.
And one thing, just to add on to what Imi was saying, one of the reasons why I was probably struggling to share with you what the activities were is because I'm no longer as quite as young as the leaders once were. And the young leaders, the people who are leading, obviously they have experience, they've gone through leadership training courses with us and have experience of leading camps or activities. But they're also young and they understand what these participants want. Well, unlike myself, who's, a little bit older, find that more of a struggle. And that's why Imi, who along with a couple of her colleagues will be heading that up. Other couple of things just to mention within that is obviously we're planning on bringing one day, we're planning on bringing it into the site and like an ODT team building day, like some people who are professionals to come in and run that type of stuff. So that will also be there. And in addition to, as Imi said before, when she spoke previously about like a day of volunteering day and a day off site. So there's a real variety of programming which is in there. I think there's just a couple more questions that maybe we haven't answered yet. I know that some people have said about, that schools are potentially bringing back bubbles in year groups. We have to follow the guidance we've been given by the government. We FZY and all similar programs which run summer camps have to follow the guidance that the government gives as the out of school settings. You can maybe tomorrow in the email we'll send you the link so you can have a look for yourself about what are the guidance that we have to work within. Right now that guidance is 15 people. If they change that, we will happily change that and increase that. But right now that is all we have. If you have more than one child, and you're dropping off at different bubbles, not every bubble is going to be having the same not every bubble is going to have a different start time, and the start times aren't going to massively vary. We will, as best as we possibly can, try and to work out so that people which have to drop off more than one kid, that their bubbles, that as best as we can, will try hopefully start as closely as possible to each other. In terms of people participating in discussions and those types of things, obviously each of these activities will be run in their bubbles of 15. So that will be the number of people who will be there and participating. And our leaders are very good. One of the things that they're very, very good at is encouraging people and bringing people in. So that no one is felt left out, that no one dominates any activity or any discussion. And that's one of the things that we very much train our leaders to be able to do. So they will be very much keeping track of that. I think someone also wrote something about refunds. The full refund policy depends on if someone was to fall ill during camp, etc., and all of those things. There's a full refund policy which are on our terms and conditions, the new terms and conditions that will be going live in hopefully in 9 minutes if all the tech is working for us. You can check that out there because it's a full refund policy based on people pulling out different points, etc. On the whole, I'm going to be very honest right now that there isn't a huge amount of refunds. There isn't like much opportunities for refunds. Obviously, this isn't a program like normally that we have. I'm talking about at this point, not for the programs, our OFEC and Keshe programs, which people have already applied for. That is separate. For those people that are applying now for this program, basis, this is a program which is only a few weeks away, and it's not like etc. So the refund policy is, if people choose to pull out in advance after saying they're going to sign out now, the refund policy for that is not going to be very large. But the full, the terms and conditions will be. You can find the full refund policy in our terms and conditions. Okay, I think that what we're going to do is to leave it there. One thing that we say is if there are if anyone has any other questions, then as I said before, we can contact you can contact FZY either at ruth@fzy.org.uk or the phone the FZY office during office opening hours on 0208 201 661, and we'll be happy to try and answer any of those questions that you have. As I said, tomorrow morning there will be an email which will be sent out to everyone with information we've shared here, links that people can actually watch any part of this again if you missed some of it, and there's like a 5-page frequently asked questions document that we put together. So what I would say is thank you all for both your time tonight. Thank you also for your kind messages and your understanding. So we're very much looking forward to be able to hosting your kids this summer. If you know of other people that are interested, as I said before, we have a capacity for 225 people this summer. So if there are other people who may not have originally signed up and are looking for something to do with their time, then feel free to share our links with them, and we will be in contact very shortly. So thank you all for your time. Good night.